Good morning. I thank you, Chairman Stile, and thank you certainly to our witnesses for being here this morning. For over 200 years, our republic has marched towards a fuller, freer system of governance, expanding access to the ballot for more and more Americans. But as we've seen time and time again, and the topic of today's hearing clearly indicates House Republicans seem to want to retreat from that important promise. States controlled by Republicans have recently engaged in systematic illegal voter purges. A Republican candidate in North Carolina sought to disenfranchise tens of thousands of voters because he didn't like the outcome of the election. And this hearing comes on the heels of last week's news that the Department of Justice under Donald Trump is seeking voter registration lists of several states representing data on millions of Americans ahead of the 2026 midterms. The Trump administration's dangerous false rhetoric, which continues going back to the 2020 election and continues about non-citizen voting, is eroding our democracy and threatens the voting rights of all Americans. Clear evidence shows that voter deregistration efforts in Republican-led states has stripped thousands of Americans of the right to vote without due process. Now, don't get me wrong, voter list maintenance, when conducted properly and legally, ensures that our elections are secure and safe. But systematic voter purges, often illegally conducted in the run-up to federal elections, pose a real threat to voters. Voter purges represent a coordinated effort by my friends on the other side of the aisle to manipulate elections, to, in effect, make American elections less American. For years, Republican officials across the country have purged hundreds of thousands of voters, including eligible U.S. citizens. In Texas, for example, Republican officials have repeatedly tried to do this, but each time, local officials discovered that Texas purges had incorrectly targeted United States citizens. And Republican cheating in Texas doesn't stop there. Recently, Donald Trump and his House Republican allies hatched a plan to gerrymander Texas's congressional map, letting Republican representatives choose their voters rather than letting Texans choose their representatives. This is happening across the country. In North Carolina, the state election board recently caved in to Trump administration demands and pressure to illegally purge at least 200,000 voters. The weaponized Department of Justice resurrected debunked conspiracy theories from the state's recent Supreme Court election to disenfranchise North Carolina voters. This is no accident. The broken Trump Justice Department has made voter disenfranchisement a priority, firing all but 3 lawyers in the voting section. And I think that leads us to ask, if Republicans are willing to kick American citizens off the rolls, if they're willing to manipulate congressional maps, if they're willing to gut the Department of Justice, what other illegal acts will President Trump and his allies take to enhance their own power or to enrich themselves? We need to call out these actions for what they are: corruption, pure and simple. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss the careful legal process for maintaining accurate voter rolls and supporting the important work of local election officials. But the Republican majority is more interested in promoting illegal and sloppy efforts to manipulate elections and deceive the American public. Today we will hear from Mary Haling, a retired teacher and fitness instructor from North Carolina. After voting in the 2024 general election, Ms. Haling learned that her name was on a list of voters to be purged in response to a lawsuit by a losing Republican candidate for the state Supreme Court. Despite providing all necessary documentation, despite being an American citizen, North Carolina Republicans tried to strip Ms. Haling of her right to vote. This is not a simple mistake. It was not a clerical error. It was part of a concerted effort to consolidate partisan power. Because Republicans know that if every American citizen can vote in 2026, they will lose. The American people are furious. They're furious that the big, ugly bill by President Trump will steal health coverage from 17 million American citizens. They're furious at Republican deception about the Epstein files, all to protect the president, who either lied to the American people for years about the existence of the client list or is lying to them now. They're furious with rampant partisan gerrymandering meant to decide the outcome elections before a single vote is cast. So the Republican majority, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the White House are trying to silence the American people. If we follow their lead, thousands of people like Ms. Haling will lose their right to vote. If President Trump and Republicans have their way, we will retreat from our country's storied history of voting rights expansion. We will no longer have, in the words of President Lincoln, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We cannot sit idly by and let that happen. And with that, I will yield back.